Oak Island Town Hall Council meeting, regular meeting, January 8, 2019, is now called to order. Gosh, what a crowd. This is amazing. Glad to see everybody here tonight. Looking forward to it. This is a special meeting, and it's one where we'll suspend the rules and have a short conversation or answer questions that any of you may have on the subjects that, both the subjects that we're talking about, and at the end of that, we'll have a 30-minute period or somewhere in there of the regular comments on how long ever they take. We'll turn it over to my pro tem, Mr. Weinkauf, and he's going to welcome you tonight.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out. I've had a lot of conversations on Facebook lately, trying to get people to come to these meetings so they can actually find out what's going on in the town. This will be the chance to find out what the upcoming year is going to bring and ask questions so we can try to answer them to the best of our ability. It's not a council's got their mind made up kind of thing. We listen to people. We make our decisions sometimes at the last moment. But being able to hear from everybody makes our job a little bit easier. So that's why we decided we'd have these town hall meetings 4 times a year so everybody could come out and express their opinion and let us hear from you.
Thank you,
so welcome.
Councilman. Thank you, Councilman. This time I'll ask Councilman Blaylock to give the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to come together tonight. Please grant us the wisdom and the love to do what's best for the citizens of Oak Island. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Blaylock. At this time, I'd call for if there's any council member like to remove or amend anything on the agenda.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll defer to my colleague.
I'd like to move number 3 up to number 2 real quick so we can get that one out of the way and then move into the town hall meeting.
All righty.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to remove items 5 and 6.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please. Thank you. On the request of Councilman Weinkauf, we've moved number 3, which is the consent agenda. At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Now, we also are going to talk about. All in favor.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Sorry, guys. Okay. Number 5 is the approval of the amendments to the fee schedule. Councilman Bach.
Thank you. I have a very simple question. It's actually for Mr. Kelly. As I was not part of the previous discussion about itinerant vendors and the change in the law, there was a long discussion here of council deliberating the matter and apparently approved it without the required vote. My question is, are you satisfied as the town manager that we can effectively restrict, as we need to, these various vending entities as they appear on street corners, et cetera? Does this language give you what you need?
Steve? I'll defer.
Yes. This amendment is where we left off the fee schedule on the last council public hearing, and so all we're reviewing now is to put the fee schedule back in there so we can put it on our thing.
But in reading the minutes, there was a discussion about whether this was really going to be adequate. So your answer is yes, it is.
Yes.
So don't go away.
No, sir.
Nor may you defer. No. Who enforces these restrictions?
That would be the zoning department. It would be Jake, falls under Jake Vares's purviews.
Okay. Thank you.
How about number 6?
Ma'am, can we go ahead and take action on this?
Yes, let's do this one first.
I make a motion to confirm approval of the changes to the fee schedule as presented.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Number 6, Mr. White?
I'd like to defer until council is here. My questions are for council.
I'm sorry?
My questions are for Mr. Eddies for council, and he's not present.
Oh,
The
okay.
attorney.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to defer, how do you do that, Lisa? You defer that and then come back to it when
Yeah.
he gets here? So we're going to go on and move into the town hall
Yes,
meeting.
please.
Yes, ma'am.
This one is a little different. We're going to suspend the rules and veer away from protocol a little bit. You're going to have 3 minutes to ask a question after Mr. Martin finishes his presentation on the sand projects and beach nourishment. We will do each one after, we will have questions specifically for the beach after his presentation. You have 3 minutes to ask your question, 1 question per person, please, just so everybody that wants to have a question will be able to get an answer, or we can find a way to get back to you on it. 30, that's about it. Can you think of anything else we need to let them know before? And we will, one of us or all of us will answer anything you ask us to the best of our ability, like Councilman Weinkauf stated in the beginning. Mr. Martin, we'd like to welcome you again. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me, and I just want everybody, David said, we want an update on everything you're doing. I said, you know, that's going to be about 10 things, and it's going to be a lot of slides. He said, that's what we want. So I apologize in advance that there's going to be 60 slides here, and but I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can. So anyway, I apologize in advance.
Lord of mercy.
Talk fast.
I will. All right, so some of these things are coming to an end. So anyway, some of these things will be pretty quick. So the first thing I wanted to update you on was the Corps of Engineers Delta project. And for those of you that don't remember, that was a project where, can we get some of the lights turned down, I guess, where this could maybe be seen a little bit better?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's better.
All right, so for those of you that don't remember, this was a project that the Corps of Engineers comes to about every 2 to 3 years and dredges out the channel for the harbor deepening for the port. And in the areas that are beach-compatible sand, what happens is that there's currently under the sand management plan that the Corps of Engineers has, is that it is a 3 cycle, and what I mean by that is that every time that it's done, 2 times it goes to Bald Head, one time it comes to Caswell Beach, Oak Island. And so this time was the time for it to come to Caswell Beach, Oak Island. The last time that happened was 2009. And what you can see here is that the area in gray was where the placement was going to be for the base project. And then what the town had done, us working with the town and working with the Corps with some coordination, was to place in the area that you see to the white, dredging additional material and placing it on the beach at the town cost. So what the Corps had originally shown was that this is you kind of looking at a cross section if you're standing out in the water and kind of looking down the beach toward the inlet. This is kind of what you'd see, your home, the dune, sort of the profile of the beach. So what they were planning to do was put about a 120-foot berm and then sloping down into the water, roughly about 40 to 55 cubic yards of sand per linear foot of beach, and moving the mean high water line out about 110 feet. Here's just some projects during construction. So the original project plan showed about 120 to 130 foot berm from the town line to 63rd Street. They had kind of shortened it a little bit. The base project was from the town line to Southeast 77th, or roughly 4,000 feet. It was going to be roughly 163,000 cubic yards of material. The Delta project that the town was actually putting its money toward was to go from that point to Southeast 58th Street here close to Town Hall, roughly 6,000 feet of beach with roughly 250,000 cubic yards. And for the $3 million and the 251,000 cubic yards, that would be roughly about $12 a cubic yard. The project was completed in the summer. We didn't get the pre and post project surveys to kind of verify what was done until December. So some of these results are hot off the press. So the Corps actually showed 120 to 130 foot berm from the town line to 63rd. The project that was actually constructed was done all the way to 58th Street as originally planned, and it was actually put in place with a little bit of a wider berm, roughly 150 feet. And I'll talk about in a little bit down the road, how that fared during Florence. So just hang with me and I'll kind of show you that. But essentially the base project was planned to have 163,000 cubic yards, and roughly what was placed was 246,000 cubic yards. So there was more material placed in the base project. And as far as the Delta project that the town $3 million was going for, was roughly, the plan was for 250,000 cubic yards, and roughly about 394,000 cubic yards was placed. So that was good news. That was more material than what we were hoping for. So ultimately, what the town paid for that 394,000 cubic yards is a little bit over, or 761. So that was all good news. And so the total volume that was placed during this project within the town limits of Oak Island was around 640,000 cubic yards. So anyway, that was good news. And I'll talk a little bit about Florence. Here's just some of the project results. You can kind of see the big berm that was kind of put out there, and kind of how it sloped and tied into where sort of what's remaining of the offshore bar. And Kyle, do we have a pointer up here? Okay, sure. Sorry about that. So anyway, what you see here is this was before placement, and then what was placed was coming out about this 154, and then the green line's kind of showing how it slopes out. And these are just a couple of representative sections. Okay, for the Lockwoods Folly, there's a number of different initiatives that are going on with Lockwoods Folly. The SDI 5 permit, a project that's now coming online with the AIWW crossing, and then also the nearshore placement that we've talked about in the past. So there again, a lot of this has to do with some of the hot spot that is shown itself again at the west end of town. And you guys have seen some of these plots before, showing how it's kind of reappeared and continuing to move back. So as far as the SDI-5 permit, another consultant's working for the town on this, O'Brien and Gear, and they've been working on this for a little while. They're working on getting this permit for the town. And what this allows the town to do is to be a permit holder, just like the Corps of Engineers, to where it could dredge a project within the currently authorized widths and depths of the channel. The timeline for approval for that is now, they're telling us late January, early February. So there again, once the town has that, they could actually have a permit to do that. There's not a lot of private dredge plant that can work in that shallow of a depth, so the purpose of getting this permit is that then ultimately the town may be able to modify the permit and go a little wider, a little deeper, so that then a private dredge plant could come in and then place material on the beach. And it's always more cost effective and easier to modify a permit rather than get a new permit. So that's the reason that the town has been moving forward on this effort. So a new thing that's happened is that since we last talked is that something that's come online for the town is the AIWW crossing project. And the Corps of Engineers, we had been talking with them about this, but we thought that at the time the material was not going to go to Oak Island, but they released a plan set in early fall that showed placing roughly 88,000 cubic yards of material on the west end of Oak Island. Now the reason that is that the Corps of Engineers has had some issues with other projects with having easements and having the appropriate easements to do placement, and so they were going through and finding out where places had easements, where they didn't, and when they reviewed it, the number of easements required on Oak Island versus Holden Beach was a lot less, so they actually showed, and they reached out to the town, and the town said, yes, we have the easements. So that's why this year the material is currently shown to go on the west end of Oak Island. We worked with the Corps over the last couple of months because they actually showed the placement area being really close to the inlet, and we said, we really don't want to do that because then it'll go right back into the inlet. We want it to stay there. So we got them to move the western edge of the placement area a little further east. The contract has been awarded, and the Corps is awaiting a final schedule to determine if the town can pay for additional material to be dredged out of the Ben Widener and placed. So what we ask, of course, is that while the dredge is here, can the town pay some additional funds to dredge additional material out of the AIWW crossing area? Since the dredge will already be here, the Corps has already paid for the mobilization, demobilization. So we asked that, and they said, well, we were waiting the final schedule. We need to see if we think we have some availability in the schedule for the contractor to be able to dredge that. And so we're waiting to hear back from them. They did inform us that the town of Holden Beach has also requested if there was additional material that could be dredged to be placed on their side. So if there is available schedule, they said that we would have to have a meeting between the two towns to discuss options and for the additional material to be dredged. So again, hopefully we'll know a little bit more about this in the next couple of weeks because there again, all the dredging has to be done by April 30th for this project. But you know, it may be that if it all lines up and the town can put some additional money in, that we might have to have a special call meeting to approve additional monies if this additional material can be dredged and placed. And so where this is this is the area that's talked about being dredged in the AIWW crossing. So it's actually where the AIWW crosses Lockwoods Folly Inlet. And of course, this is showing the pipeline and going to the placement area sort of along the hot spot at the west end of Oak Island. So again, that's also some good news. Now, the nearshore placement. So as you recall, last time we met, we had talked about the town had asked about, and you guys had approved, working with the county to place 30,000 cubic yards in the hole in the hot spot that's offshore. And I'll just go down to show you again, excuse me, where that's located. And that was currently estimated to be 30,000 cubic yards. And there again, this was stuff that we talked about like in August. And what we had been told was that they were going to, excuse me, that they were going to, the next time they had a chance to do that, thank you, the next time that they had a chance to do that, that they would come back and place that. We went to a meeting about 3 weeks ago, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now what they're showing is that the hopper or the dredges that can actually place the material into near shore are not going to be in this area for at least 6 months. And so what they're showing for the next two projects to be done in Lockwoods Folly Inlet are with the sidecaster dredge. And for those of you that don't know what the sidecaster dredge is, it's the one that just picks it up and then it is just discharging the pipe that's maybe 100 feet off. So there again, we reminded them that the town and the county, that the funds that we had appropriated for it were not to do that type of project, that it was for some sort of beneficial use placement. And so they said, no, we do understand that. So the next couple of times that things are done in Lockwoods Folly Inlet will probably be with the sidecaster. However, those schedules always change. So, you know, they told us they would keep us in the loop and let us know if it happens before or if something would happen this winter. But for now, we're saying it'll probably be summer or next fall before that type of project could be done. I'm going to let Dawn come up and talk about the dune monitoring project.
Good evening. Just as a follow-up to the FEMA dune restoration project that occurred about a year or so ago, post-Hurricane Matthew, based on agency coordination, it was determined that the town of Oak Island would have to do bi-weekly monitoring of sand color, sand temperature, and also grain size. So Moffett Nickel, in coordination with the town and the Sea Turtle volunteer coordinator, conducted bi-weekly monitoring May 15th through the end of the summer, basically August 31st. We inserted data loggers up and down the beach in those areas that were nourished, as well as 3 control stations We set up the measurements to record on an hourly basis, 24 hours during that time frame from mid-May to end of August. Realizing that, just as an FYI, for background purposes, sand temperature does have a consequence on gender for sea turtles. For those of you that are kind of follow sea turtle nesting, we have more females that are laid up in the sort of northern part of their nesting area up here for loggerheads versus the southern more males. So certainly Fish and Wildlife Service was concerned about potential changes in temperature and how that may affect gender. So we evaluated the temperature, and as you can see, dune versus control, our dune temperature stations were those that were within those areas that had been nourished, and average min about 74.1, typically found in the early part of the season, May to early June, and then getting into July, August, we had some pretty high temperatures reaching up into 89. We also evaluated color of the sand. During the construction period, we were in direct coordination on site with the agencies and determined that at some point during the nourishment placement of the dredge material that the color was not necessarily, it was compatible from a grain size concern perspective, but not from a color perspective. And so we wanted to be sure we complied with those rules and did ask the contractor to move. And as they did move and remove some of the darker layers, the material did become a little bit lighter. As I mentioned, there is a state sediment grain size compliance that the material placed during the FEMA dune renourishment did comply with those state rules, but based on the color, we did do a little bit more monitoring. So we have the grain size up there. Just a summary of the overall results. We did provide a final report to the agencies, state and federal resource agencies by October. We did receive confirmation that Fish and Wildlife did receive it. We have not received any comments. The temperatures recorded in those areas that were renourished were slightly warmer, approximately 1 degree, than those in the control stations. We had 3 control stations. Most of our loggers were installed on the leeward side of the dune just to be sure that any erosional effects during the summertime period would not impact the actual equipment. Again, those areas that were not nourished typically did have the different color, Munsell color values that were lower, more compatible. Again, grain size was compatible, and all those, based on our coordination with Jackie Kaiser, the sea turtle coordinator, we indicated that there were 46 false crawls across Oak Island Beach, with only 17 those in the dune restoration area, and all those that were actually the nests that were laid were relocated to an area that had not been nourished. So there was good success. And just going back to the core project that Johnny mentioned, they also had to relocate all their nests as well.
Okay, thanks, Dawn. So another thing that we've been working on the last couple of months was the annual monitoring survey. So again, we're always tracking what's happening year to year along Oak Island, what kind of volume changes that we're seeing across the island. So I'm going to start first with the one that was done 2017 to 2018. That was completed right before Florence, and then I'll talk about what we did the same thing after Florence, so we can talk about where things were before Florence and then where things were after. So we completed the annual survey right before Florence arrived, and the survey consists of beach profiles. We also are tracking what's happening with Eastern Channel, as well as Lockwoods Folly Inlet. Just showing you a graphic of all the locations. These red lines are showing you where we're taking survey profiles and how we've kind of broken up the town into the east end, the east, central, west, west end, and then right around Lockwoods Folly Inlet. And sort of also showing, you know, the volumetric measures that we're doing. So we're always kind of measuring volume change from the top of the dune out to different elevations, whether it be mean high water out to -5, the wading depth to the outer bar, as well as 20 and 30. So a apologize that I thought this would actually show up a little bit better, but I'll make it bigger next time. But essentially, what I have the red circles around is essentially what we are showing here is a lot of gain, but of course that was where we had the placement from the core project. So if we looked at how much volume change we had from August to September, or August 2017 to September 2018, we roughly had, that's roughly about 680,000 cubic yards in the first two reaches there. And if you remember from that plot, I told you that we placed about 640. So that kind of tells you, that there really wasn't a lot of change except for, what was placed. You can also see above some of these elevations that the numbers are all sort of small numbers but positive. So the good news is that before Florence came, it was relatively a quiet year for Oak Island as far as change. The only place that really had a lot of erosional areas is, again, the hot spot at the west end. That's why I'm showing this circle right here. So out at minus 20, which is about the closure depth, had lost about 100,000 yards in that area. This is a plot showing sort of the volume change cubic yards per linear foot. And again, you can really see the high numbers here, but that, of course, is where the sand was placed for the Delta project. And then you can sort of see that everything else was sort of, again, a quiet year. So at least we were fortunate in the part that there was not a lot of erosion before Florence came. Here's just some of the example profiles showing, again, this is one that shows the build up from the Delta project. This is showing where the FEMA emergency dune was built. And then this is showing the erosion at the west end. Again, sort of this escarpment that's continuing to occur. The Eastern Channel, again, there was some additional shoaling within it. So in the beach compatible reaches, if we were to go back and when we did this project back in 2014, 2015, the first time roughly in the beach compatible portions, we dredged about 250,000 cubic yards of material out. So if we look at, all right, if we were to dredge back out to that same template, how much would we take? It's roughly 107,000 cubic yards. So of that 250 that we taken out, roughly a little less than half of it is shoaled back in, and of course most of it is right around the mouth of the channel itself, where all the material that's coming around the spit and everything kind of shoaling in that area. The area in the non-beach compatible portion, or in this section, around the marina, has stayed fairly stable. I mean, very little change or very little shoaling in that area, which is to be expected because there again, there's not as many currents, not as much sand moving around in that like it is at the inlet complex. Lockwood's Folly, we also are monitoring it to see how it changes. So from 2017 to 2018, we had some movement of the channel. It deepened a little bit, as well as some straightening over the inlet bar, and probably part of that was due to some of the core work that was done over the last year, but not a lot of change there. Now I'll talk about post-Florence. And so, again, for post-Florence, the big issue with that storm was, of course, the duration of it. It was a strong storm. I don't want to belittle that. But compared to some areas in northern of the coast, that the wave heights were a bit higher and the surges were a little bit higher. I mean, at least in this area, they were a little bit less. But they still had the duration of 3 days. And so even though the wave conditions weren't as strong here as they were in other areas, it still lasted 3 days. And we do some monitoring for some of the other areas of the beach, and we're seeing that this long duration really ended up having a lot of effect. I try to tell people that if I'm going to have a boxing match, would I rather fight Apollo Creed or Rocky Balboa? I think Florence was kind of like Rocky Balboa. The duration could just stay for a long time. I think I'd rather fight Apollo Creed than Rocky Balboa just based on that. But this, I'll say that You know, the wave heights offshore got up to about 15 feet. Near shore probably up to about 10 feet. That the bottom graphic here is showing a wave gauge that's offshore of Sunset Beach, but again, the waves would probably be very consistent to what's just offshore of Oak Island, whereas the 15-foot, 16-foot high offshore wave measurements are out here at the Wilmington Harbor gauge. So again, what that means is that when we look at sort of what volume losses we had during Florence, roughly, if you look at out to -5 and -12, we were somewhere in the 400 to 450,000 cubic yards of material that was lost. If we go out to -20, there wasn't that much change, and what you'll see when I show you some of the profiles is, of course, what happened was that the material was taken from the upper beach, deposited offshore. So, you know, within closure, the material did not go out past closure, but it's definitely offshore. It's definitely outside where the outer bar is for that material. So it is still providing some protection, but it's not as good, of course, as if it's up on the beach. What was lost sort of above 4.5, which is sort of our 5-year surge level, that was roughly 180,000 cubic yards across the whole island. So it kind of went 180, and then above mean high water 350, out to -5 about 385, and then about 450 to -12, and then by the time it got to -20, very little change, just because the material that was taken from the up on the onshore was just deposited offshore. Here's just some of the volume changes. You know, so it varied from 10 cubic yards a linear foot was sort of an overall average that you could look at. Again, this kind of shows, and I got some bigger blow-ups I'll show in a second, but the blue line being before Florence, the red line being after. You see the erosion, and then some of the deposition offshore in some of this deeper water. This is up where the berm was placed, and I have a blow-up of this one too, but you'll see that a good portion of the berm was pulled offshore out in the depths of about 10 feet of water. However, the dune was not affected, whereas everywhere else on the island, the dune was affected, or in some areas, what had been placed was gone. So we are talking to FEMA. We had a meeting with FEMA right before Christmas about what we could possibly get reimbursed for from a dune restoration perspective, and we're hopeful that we'll have some clarification on that here in the next couple of months. But it looks like we're hopeful that we will get some dune restoration money for that for post-Florence. It was sort of a Section G was sort of called out as far as the disaster declaration goes. Here's just a blow-up of right in the middle of where the Delta project was placed, and you can see the berm loss versus where it went captured offshore, but still sort of above -20 of closure. So let's all pray for a good summer to where some of that material will move back up onto the beach. Not much changed at Eastern Channel with Florence. Roughly, if you remember, it was 107. For before Florence, it was only 2,000 more cubic yards of material that shoaled within Eastern Channel in the beach compatible portion, and not much change within the non-beach compatible portion. And again, not too much change at Lockwood's Folly Inlet. We had some minor shoaling over the inlet bar, and where there was shoaling that occurred, probably 0 to 2 feet. All right, now we'll talk about the FEMA turtle habitat project. So again, we had an initial project for a volume of 364,000 cubic yards. We've been talking to the town, and it's possible that there might be some additional monies that we could put toward this project. So we had a meeting with the permit agencies about a month ago. And of course, we want to tell them we want to get a permit for as large a project as we think we can afford, and then if it ends up being smaller, that's fine. But it's always better to ask for a permit for a larger project than come back with a smaller. So right now, we're currently talking to them about potential project volume of 750 to 1 million cubic yards. And we also may incorporate the post-Florence project volume depending on the FEMA approval and reimbursement timeline. So we're hopeful that in about April or May that we'll know what we will have to work with the post-Florence volume, and if we can, we'd like to add that in just so that we're getting as much bang for the buck as we can. So what we're talking about for the different alternatives is, of course, with the FEMA project, we're talking about 3 alternatives here. The actual project itself would be, for the FEMA reimbursement, would be in sort of the Oak Island East area, roughly 14,000 feet. But if the town has additional money, we could maybe go a little bit further and a little bit longer. So we're looking at a couple of different alternatives. So if we go with the turtle habitat restoration only, that would be a 20-foot wide dune at elevation 10 with a 70-foot berm, and going from within the turtle habitat area, that would be roughly 470,000 cubic yards. So, FEMA would be reimbursing for 360 of that, and then the town would be paying for an additional 100 roughly. With some of the longer projects, again, we're just in the process of completing these designs now. Alternative A would be a 20-foot wide dune at elevation 15 and a 50-foot berm at elevation 7. But going 18,000 feet, that would be roughly 1.4 million cubic yards, so we don't have enough monies for that. Or as well as alternative B. So we'll probably look at alternative B and probably just shorten the distance to where we could get roughly to 1 million yards. And so then what that would look like in section is, this is just a section showing 310. The red line showing sort of the base option, which would just be putting a dune in at elevation 10 with a 50-foot berm. The blue one showing elevation 12 with, again, a 50-foot berm. And then the green one showing up to elevation 15. We think, at least looking at historical dune elevations, probably 12 is going to be where we're going to target for the FEMA Habitat Restoration Project. Where that material is going to come from is what we're doing now is looking at offshore site 1, where the Holden Beach took their material from the Central Reach project area, and we're looking to expand that. Currently, within their currently permitted limits, there's roughly 400 to 500,000 cubic yards. So as you see, we need to kind of find another, 600,000-700,000 at least in that area to be able to do the larger project we're talking about. This will be done with a hopper. The field investigations, the state, in talking with them, we had to go out and do some work with magnetometer surveys to make sure there was no shipwrecks in this area. That's just been completed, and the vibrocoring will start February 1. There's a firm out of Florida that's coming up. You need a pretty large boat to be able to drill these vibrecores in this deeper water. So anyway, there's only a few companies in the country that do that. So, but they've put us on the schedule, and they'll be here February 1st. I just kind of wanted to show you from some of the material. These are some pictures of the vibrecores that were taken that Holden Beach did. And what you can see here is you see the sand in the first 2 to 3 feet is sort of a nice sort of brown sand color, and then it quickly turns into some darker material. So, this site out here, everyone thinks that, okay, when you go offshore, there should just be piles and piles of sand. But really what you have is piles and piles of rock with areas of sand. So the whole thing about finding the sand is finding these pockets of areas. So anyway, you can see here kind of what we'll kind of be dealing with when we're trying to find this additional 700,000 cubic yards. So I'll talk about the field investigations. Will be tied up in the next 3 months. We've already started the permitting and the preliminary engineering, and again, it's all to what we talked about last time we were here, is having a project ready to construct starting January of next year, January to May of next year. So the master plan, we are continuing to work on that as well. You guys know what the purpose and need of that is, and it's really to come up with a long-term plan, find the sand that could meet the need for the next 50 years for it. We are currently working to, and I'll talk about some timelines here in a second about, you know, where we are in these and where we're going to be providing some of these inputs. If you remember, we talked about 2 to 3 million cubic yards for the initial project and then 1 million cubic yard every 6 years. So that would be roughly about 10 to 15 million cubic yards that we would be needing to find. And we'd have to add some buffer for storm needs. And of course, with that, we may need to build it in phases. And the modeling to refine these estimates is currently ongoing. The geotechnical investigations in November, we did complete the vibrochores for Eastern Channel, Lockwood's Folly Inlet, and the AIWW Ben Widener. We're currently talking with the state. We have to get some special permissions to do the stuff up at Yellowbanks. So that's going to be done January to March. We have the stuff I talked about for the Central Reach project. We've also been in discussions with Frying Pan Shoals and some of the other offshore areas. So why I'm showing you this line is that there's some other additional agencies you have to talk to about sand if you go out further than 3 miles. So this gray line is showing you the 3-mile limit. And there's also been some discussions, a lot of discussions with the agencies about Frying Pan Shoals. Bald Head Island had talked about using this, and it had been denied. So there's going to be a longer-term discussion for Frying Pan Shoals. So therefore, there's some permits we have to get from BOEM to be able to go out and do the investigations of these. So we're turning those in within the next couple of weeks. And hope to get those started sometime in the summer time frame to next fall for that. But that'll end up going into the overall master plan for the big initial project and the maintenance projects. We're also doing Lockwood's Folly and Inlet Management Plan as part of the master plan. And what we're doing there is looking at all the history, digitizing the inlet throat and the shoreline locations, and looking to where there is a safe corridor to where if we're going to try to manage Lockwood's Folly Inlet, where should we try to place the channel? How deep should it be so that it's not hurting Oak Island or Holden Beach, if we can find that sweet spot. We have a subcontractor coming out here at late January to do the velocity studies for that. So you're getting ready to see a number of boats out here doing the field work. So I'm finally getting to the overall summary. So I know there was great rejoicing with that. So anyway, the Corps of Engineers Delta project. So that's completed. Lockwood's Folly initiatives. The SDI-5 permit should be completed by February. The AIWW crossing with beach placement, that should be done by May this year. The nearshore placement we think will be done the last half of this year. The dune monitoring is complete. Completed the annual survey. The post-Florence survey, we're going to wait and turn that in because a lot of that stuff's going to have to go to FEMA, and they're asking for some very specific documentation about what they want to see in that report for the reimbursement. So that's going to take a little while to get that all figured out. The Turtle Habitat Project, the field investigations will be complete by March. Engineering and permitting submittals, we'll have those in the agency's hands by May so that they can be looking at it over the summer, so that then we receive the permits and finalize the construction documents by September, October. Bid the project in November with project construction next May to June, or January to May, sorry. And the master plan, the field investigations are ongoing. The estimate of the engineered beach volume need, complete that by this spring, summer, and the environmental documentation is ongoing as well. We're setting up third-party master agreements with the Corps. So this is just sort of a graphic to show everything we're working on and kind of where we are. The red line is where we are right now. So there again, you can see the Delta project being complete, the SDI-5 permit completed by February. And in the nearshore placement, we're kind of putting in light blue because we don't know exactly when that will happen, but we think it'll be toward the last part of this year. Dune monitoring is complete, the annual survey, post-Florence, and then you see really the FEMA reimbursement request. We think we should have an answer about that by May. And we are wanting to do the reimbursement project for post-Florence that next year. At the same time, we're doing the turtle habitat construction. Hopefully we can tie those two together. We'll see how much volume they allow us to put in. You know, we still might have to do a truck haul with that project. If it's, you know, say 10 cubic yards a foot, we can't get a dredge contractor to put that low of a unit rate along the beach, but we'll see what we can do with that. So with that, I appreciate everybody's patience, and hopefully that's let you know what all the initiatives we're working on and where we are and what we've been doing. Again, there's just a lot of coordination, a lot of discussions that have to be done with these, with the Corps, to try to keep things moving. So anyway, but we're tying up a lot of things now finally, and these two big initiatives with the master plan and the FEMA turtle habitat project, those are the ones that are now finally going to be coming up to be, you know, the turtle habitat and the post-Florence next winter, and then the master plan as soon after.
Thank you, Johnny. If you feel like it and have the stamina, can you stay there? Because we're going to open the floor up.
Sure.
David, do we have a staff member that can take the microphone to the people instead of having them come? And I think it'll help. Thank you, Kyle.
That's my fun.
What is that?
That's his job.
Oh, that's your job. Okay. All right.
Good to hear, Johnny.
Mr. Kelly. Again, if you would, keep your comments or questions to 3 minutes, and we'll try to get to me as we can.
Leon Hicks, Barnes Bluff. First of all, I want to commend you on this. It's an excellent overview. It shows excellent project management.
I'm sorry, could you state your name and address? I'm sorry.
Leon Hicks, Barnes Bluff.
Thank you.
And I was just commenting on an excellent job of project management and overview. Thank you, sir. Question about the monitoring of the thermal studies of the sand and particulate size and that sort. Is that going to continue on, or is that phase completed?
Come up to the mic. Come up to the mic.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Thank you for the question. The question was whether or not we'll continue doing the dune temperature sand monitoring, and at this time we haven't been asked to continue. It wasn't necessarily a permit condition, but the town did it out of their own willingness to work with the agencies and provide them the data they requested. So at this time, we feel that we completed what they needed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any more questions about sand?
Hi, Nancy McMurray, 6607 West Beach, a.k.a. the hot spot. And I know y'all have had my emails, and I appreciate your paying attention to us on the West End. I did want to ask, because I couldn't quite follow everything, is something going to be placed on the West End in our area this year before turtle season starts? And my second question is, why does no turtle restoration funding ever come to the West End? Do the turtles not like the West End?
Fair enough. So the answer to the first question is yes, there should be sand that comes to the West End this year with the AIWW crossing project. That, and again, this was a little bit of a surprise to all of us because normally it goes to Holden Beach, but I will tell you that you should be proud of your mayor and your town manager. We were in a meeting with the Corps in Holden Beach, and it got a little contentious at some points, but you know it worked out well. So I'll say that yes, we should there should be a 75-foot berm if what they show on the plan is what's built. Now there again, you have to understand from the Corps perspective, the Corps is paid to do navigation projects, and sometimes shore protection projects. The AIWW crossing project is a dredging project. So really what they care about is getting the material out of the channel, and they are placing it on the beach, but it's not like they're going to be surveying a lot to see, okay, we put this 75-foot berm. It's going to be, did we get the material out, and we kind of placed it in this area. So I just want you to kind of understand that it's not going to be as carefully placed maybe as such as a beach nourishment project that we would do normally. But what is shown on the plan is a 75-foot berm out at elevation 6. So if you could think about what was built during the Delta project, which was roughly 150, it would be about half that width is what would be built. Now there again, you know, but that's what's shown on the plan, what they're currently saying that they will do. And so, I mean, I'm 90% sure that's going to happen. They've signed the contract, so it should happen. But, you know, things we live in a world where things change all the time. So, you know, I don't want you to be too disappointed, but, you know, if you told me this last year, I would have said no. But now we feel a lot better that there's going to be material on the west end this year. As far as, I think the Turtles like the west end as well. I think that what you're hearing is that originally, due to some work by other people in the past, there was this turtle habitat restoration project that was kind of done on the east end of town. So what you're hearing with the turtle habitat restoration project is sort of, that's a carryover for an old project that was done in the early 2000s that was just happened to be done on the east end, and it happened to be called the Turtle Habitat Restoration Project. So it's not like the turtles like one versus the other, but that was an area that I think was in a special need of sand probably back at that time, and that's what it was named.
And FEMA, it was blown, a lot of it was the habitat that was put there by the federal government blew away during Matthew, and that's why that particular project was, miracle actually happened for FEMA to agree to reimburse us for that. So
at any time, the turtle funding could come to any part of the island.
not exactly.
So they just like Colden Beach always took the sand, so Colden Beach thinks they always get the sand. Something like that.
No, I mean, I think, and again, those decisions, like when FEMA decided to do that original building the project back in the early 2000s, that kind of happened at the same time the harbor deepening was going on, and there was just a lot of opportunity, I think, to piggyback and for some cost-effective sand and things of that nature. I wasn't around at that time, so I can't really say, you know, all the things that went on. I'm sure there's some other people in the room that could probably help us with that. But anyway, I think, I don't want you to get too, I mean, it's not, and there's not like now FEMA does a lot of turtle habitat restoration projects. So,
That's the only one that they've ever done, the federal government.
Correct. So the town was really fortunate to even have that, you know, done roughly 19 years ago. So anyway, that was just kind of a name given to this project, but I don't think we're going to see turtle habitat restoration projects in the future, just for turtle habitat restoration.
Thank you, Johnny. Next one, please.
Hi, I'm Jim Mariner from 34th Street on the island. I have a question about the placement of the dunes and the two projects we did last year. Both of them seem to be very effective. I mean, the first phase of it got washed out just with normal beach erosion. I mean, gone. I didn't leave the island during Florence, and I was standing on the dunes on Saturday morning looking at what was going on. We weren't getting much high seas or anything, or high waves because of the direction of the storm. And it was still broaching it, but we lost a lot of the last year's projects before we got to Florence. It seemed to me that the dunes were placed in the actual high tide zone, so the surf is breaking on the dunes and stuff, the renourishment, whatever we did last year. I think people that walk the beaches will agree that a lot of it was caved well before any major storms. Does it need to be moved back a little bit, 10, 15 feet to just give it a little more protection for big storms and not just every day-to-day damage from the waves?
No, that's a great question. So, one of the reasons that the dune was placed where it was last time was we were trying to get something in place as quickly as we could, and an emergency permit from Division of Coastal Management. And in order to get that quick permit, it was place the dune back where it was, where the vegetation line was. And of course, as you said, we were like, well, and try to keep it out of mean high water. And so part of the discussion we've been having with FEMA this time is that given the state of the beach here at Oak Island, there's not much of a berm left. So, what we have been talking to them about, and one of the reasons that this time it's going to take a little bit longer to work out this situation with FEMA is that we've talked to them and they've agreed that we need to place the dune up on top of a pad of sand that we can build out a little bit more just so that it's not immediately under attack. So those kind of discussions are what's going to take us about 3 months to work out with FEMA because, we hear you and agree, but the whole reason that was done last time was to get something in as quickly as possible. So it was the quickest permitting path was to put it back where it was immediately. And, it had escarped. And so, yes, we were putting it in kind of harm's way from day one. So we are trying to do that a little bit different this time. But those kind of discussions with FEMA, we think are probably going to take us a couple of months to kind of get that worked out. But we agree, and we hope to do it a little bit better this time, or I guess not to those same constraints. Hopefully we won't have those same kind of constraints to work under. And essentially the other thing too is that we were trying to, the fact that FEMA is now talking about allowing us to possibly build a pad to put the dune on, we're definitely going to be filling out into the water's edge now this time with whatever pad we build. So the permitting is going to take longer, and it'll at least, that's why we're saying that even this post-Florence project will be next winter, because it's going to take a while to get permits for that because we're placing material in the water.
Thank you, John. There's a couple, Mrs. Caswell and Ms. Thorne.
Helen Cashwell, 3407 East Yacht. In looking at the profile that you gave us tonight after what happened with the hurricane, I would like to know, is it any possibility of the town pushing sand at low tide and replacing some of that and putting it back up? As whenever we have soft sand, it blows away with the wind, and yet other islands have been pushing sand. Why can we not participate in that?
Good question.
Well, one thing, the profile I showed you where that material that was pushed offshore, it's out actually in about 10 feet of water, so it would be really hard to push that back up from that point. We're hopeful that during the summer, when the beach kind of recovers naturally, that some of that will come back. As far as some of the beach pushing, I think that where you don't have a dune already, that those things can kind of help because, but the thing about dune pushing is that, if you're taking the material from out at the water's edge, the water's going to be able to come closer in. So it's kind of a balancing act about, okay, well, yeah, I can build a little bit more of a berm here. And I think that if you don't have a dune, that dune pushing or scraping or beach scraping or whatever, can be effective. But, if you already have a dune in place, like I said, it's a little bit more of a balancing act on if beach scraping makes sense.
Well, I know where we've had the overwash, it's just nothing there. We could at least stop some of that with our own sand pushing, not waiting for others to do it.
Well, I think the town, I'd have to go to David as far as, I think that they do you guys have a permit for sand pushing?
I guess I'll let you answer his question first before I comment. So the answer is yes? Okay. Excuse me. Betty Thorne, 2501 East Beach Drive. The FEMA dune restoration project that you're working on now with the pad and so forth, where do you anticipate getting that material from? Are you talking about a truck haul again or some other location?
Right. So if we can tie it to the other FEMA project, it would come from the dredging material offshore. If we can't, after the lessons learned of the last project, it would have to be an area that had more testing done, some vibrocoring done to make sure that the color matched and everything else, so that, you know, we didn't have the same issue that happened during the last project. So no matter where we end up doing it from, you know, more sediment testing will be required to make sure that that's not repeated.
Can I follow up just a moment?
Sure.
The location where you truck hauled from before, is there more material there that could be accessed that's a lighter color? Is there more material there first, and is it a lighter color?
We've heard that there is, but, you know, before we would use that again, we'd want to make sure we do enough testing this time to be sure that we have enough volume and that we didn't hit a bad ribbon, because you remember we kind of did this over 2 seasons, and the first season, you know, the material was lighter, it wasn't as bad. But then what happened is then when we, you know, you can't place this material during the summer because of turtles, so we took the summer off, we started back, and I think the pit had been used for some other projects, and then lo and behold, the contractor got into a bad ribbon, and then it became the issue, and ultimately we had to tell him, you know, you have to move to it. Well, we told him many times you have to move to another area, but it finally got to the point where we said, no, you have to dig out past this ribbon and get back to some better material. So anyway, if we go back to that point, the agencies are going to want to see a lot more testing.
Thank you.
Any more questions about nourishment or anything regarding the beach sand or for Johnny? Raise your hand. One more up here, David.
Thank you. Martin Hawkins, 117 Northeast 34th Street, Oak Island. The other day in the State Port Pilot, there was a photograph of the way it was, and it showed the loop road down the west end of the island before Hazel. And there were groins extending out into the ocean around there. Are those groins still there? Are they still having an effect? And why is it Bald Head Island can put groins in and we cannot?
As far as the groins, if they're still there, I don't know, Steve. Do you think that they're? I have not seen a signature of them. If they are, they're maybe a little bit further back, or they've probably been beat up. As far as can you build groins, yeah, North Carolina will allow terminal groins to be built at the end of an inlet, and that's the one that Bald Head built. As part of our inlet management study that we're doing for the master plan, we will be looking at, you know, does a terminal groin make sense for Oak Island? They are allowed, you know, but there is a lot of controversy surrounding those, especially at Bald Heads went pretty easily because it was next to a huge shipping channel that was dredged to 45, 48 feet. And so the relative signature or effect of that groin is pretty minor compared to dredging a 40-foot or 40-foot deep channel. Why you see the other ones end up in lawsuits and everything that happens with the controversy is because around a shallow inlet, a shallow draft inlet where maybe you're only dredging down 10 feet or 12 feet, the relative effect of that groin may be higher. It still may be not too bad, but it may be higher relative, so then it becomes a little bit of a grayer picture, and that's why you see such controversy around that. Now, but they are allowed, and we will be studying it, and we'll be looking at, okay, when it comes to the hot spot at the west end of the island, do we think we can solve it with dredging a straighter channel sort of in between the two islands if we can thread the needle between the shipwrecks that are out there? Do we think we can solve it with that, or is it going to take some sort of hardened structure to sort of capture that sand to build it out? You know, I will say that, you know, we just kind of see that hole that keeps showing up. You know, we'll do a nourishment project, kind of fill it in, but then all of a sudden it'll come back. So there's just probably something in the underlying geology there that'll, you know, allows a little bit more focused wave energy to come into that one spot. So, but we will be looking at that as part of the master plan.
Question. Thank you, Mr. Martin. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank
we'll
you for
move on
what you
to
let
the
us do.
Next part of the town hall meeting is a discussion on paid parking, and I think probably it would be better suited if we ask for comments first, council, weigh in on this, and then discuss it, or discuss it and then ask comment, and then ask for comments. Any comments on which way you think would be best? Let's go with the public first.
I think so.
Okay, good. Any discussion, comments, for, against, whatever you have to say, we're ready and willing to listen. We are going to be making a decision, I think, probably pretty soon, on whether we do instruct staff to reach out for RFPs regarding paid parking revenue, so we can have, you know, there's pros and cons on everything we do, and we are interested and we are requesting your input. So, raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and just say your name and address, please.
Okay, I had signed up to speak, but the first item that I wanted to speak about was about the paid parking, so...
Okay, well, we'll get you on the back. Next section's going to be on public comments. If you'd like to wait till then, just keep this on paid parking.
Absolutely. So, Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Gerald Edwards. I live at 108 Northeast 47th Street. And again, I've got two issues, but I'll save the second one for the regular comments. The first one is regarding the issue of paid parking, and there's at least one of you on the council that thinks that residents do not pay enough. I watched the YouTube video of the November meeting, and I've really got an issue with that. I think we pay plenty. Oak Island has the highest tax rate of any of the beach towns around here. If you go on the Brunswick County website and take a look at that, even Carolina Beach and Wrightsville Beach. So, you know, I take a little bit of an issue with that, except for Bald Head Island. Bald Head Island has a higher tax rate. There have been discussions about awarding a 5-year contract. 5 years is a long time, especially if this experiment does not work out. I don't think the payback will come anywhere close to being worth the cost of implementation. Hundreds of signs erected, parking enforcement, dealing with irate people, loss of patrons for local businesses, people calling the police department and having to be redirected to parking enforcement, people getting creative and parking at unoccupied beach houses, people parking at the tennis courts behind City Hall and walking to the beach, and on and on. As I understand it, the idea would be to yield around $100,000 a year, which would be $1 million in 10 years. And really, if you look at it, that's not very much money, considering all the infrastructure that's going to be required to implement this. You know, we're not Wrightsville Beach or Carolina Beach, and I don't think we want to be. I strongly urge you to not go forward with paid parking. To me, it's kind of like taking a shotgun and shooting your foot off to get a splinter out from under your toenail. You know, if you take $7,500 or 7,500 residents and divide it into $100,000, that's like $13.88 a resident. I mean, I would just almost as soon you know, pay the money and not have to fool with this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Betty Thorne, 2501 East Beach Drive. I understand the bid opening for the RFPs will be next week. Am I right on that? If that's the case, I'm wondering if this discussion wouldn't be better had after we have a bid opening and we know what the proposals are as to what the cost of the project would be, what the anticipated net revenue to the town would be. Would that be a better time to have this discussion? That's my question.
Anybody like to address that? Council?
Well, there's a lot, if you know the Facebook, and there's a lot out there that gets blown out of proportion. So if we can get questions coming to us, so we're hearing and listening, because we always get accused we do not listen, then I think it's beneficial to us in the long run hearing what everybody has to say. And then once we get to proposals, we still can have another discussion about it, because if it's not worth it, it's not worth it. But just so everybody knows why we're even looking at the paid parking, is because when we started this master plan for the beach, we were looking at a project at $40 million. Well, guess who that $40 million falls on? It falls on all of us, the taxpayers of Oak Island. Nobody else shares that $40 million project. So it made sense to us that somebody, if we could reduce that cost by having some extra income coming in, then that's what we would look at. Like we said, there's nothing in stone. We're just exploring like we should do to do our job. But since we've been getting money coming in from FEMA, it looks like the project may not be that $40 million. We don't have an exact price yet. We're still working on the plans to be able to get the money to see what it's going to cost every taxpayer. But we have to look at every scenario. The mayor and I said we'd look at any way we could get money to come in here to pay for this so it didn't fall on the back of taxpayers. And this is just a small portion. So if we hear from people, bring this no, yes, we're listening to what's going on. And I think it benefits us in the whole output of it. Sorry, long answer.
Okay, anyone else? You got one here too?
Stay there because the question's going to be. Hi, I'm Mike Defio, 902 West Yacht. I have a couple questions. First one's on the RFP. But I have a lot of concern about the infrastructure that potentially can be put in place, meaning meters or kiosks, whatever. So my first question is what specifications have been put into the RFP around the method payments that are acceptable to the town?
Well, basically, we gave them options to present back to us. We told them leasing equipment as purchasing equipment, looking at those kind of things. We wanted to know what the market was on their side and what they do in other townships, so they should come back with about 3 different financial plans for us to review. We didn't try to pinpoint any specific thing at this time, and we gave some generic numbers for them to be able to look at. But that's as far as we went, because we wanted to sort of see what the market was before we started making a decision.
Okay. So we didn't put any exclusions in saying anything but meters, right? Okay. The other one's really a question to the council. If anybody would be willing to share their opinions or feelings about the acceptable methods of payments.
I couldn't hear his question.
Mike, we can't hear you guys out there. You're going to have the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Now we can
Now we can hear you.
No, it's a question to anybody on the council.
You'd like to know what we'd like to see, what kind of infrastructure?
What are your opinions on, or your positions or feelings about the kind of payment methods that are acceptable?
Mr. Bott, would you like to address that? And as well, I will also say that I don't get a vote, but if there were to be paid parking, it would have to be as non-invasive as possible and is up to technology. If we'd have put in paid parking 4 years ago, it could have already been outdated with the technology that's available today. And there's so many new ways that are so simple. You can even put more money on your thing sitting on the beach.
If I may, sir, I'd like to step back from your question just a bit. So I think we need to take the long-run view here. We have an island that's growing. Hopefully that will continue to be prosperous. We have a building boom. We've had an increase of surge in visitors with thousands of vehicles. So beyond the financial consideration for beach funding, which is real, when you're looking at minimally $30 million, even if all these other pieces come together. First and foremost, public safety, traffic safety is a major issue, and it needs to be dealt with. We need to preserve property rights, as people, as you probably have observed, park all over the place, including people's private property. And I think if we can do that and get a revenue stream that reduces the burden on the taxpayer, so much the better. I mean, that's my strategic view looking at it for the next 5 years. Yes, there are a lot of details. Most of the previous proposals we're larded with all kinds of administrative costs and setup and manpower, and council was, I believe, correct to reject them. Hopefully, the rebid will produce leaner, more adjustable terms and conditions. And to answer your question directly, most of the vendors that I can see online are doing it digitally. You swipe a card either at the kiosk or more conveniently through your smartphone. So there's no, or very little, if none, no money collection per se. And not a lot of obstructions or meters that look unsightly. And that's, that along with 5,000 other details we can discuss per Betty's point when we get the actual proposals. We don't have them. And per the first gentleman's comment, I agree. I think there needs to be a projected revenue stream that we can anticipate. I disagree. I think the term needs to be longer because the first year is proof of concept, and then we need to look at where we are and have revenue projections we can support. And if we can't get a contractor who will give us a kind of out termination by mutual agreement, then we shouldn't be in that agreement. But I think we have to look, and we have to suspend some of the old prejudices we had about visitor parking, because we're going to have an enormous revenue challenge very shortly in the spring if Mr. Martin delivers this report. I mean, that's been my frustration, is we have no idea what the cost is, therefore we haven't been able to move forward. But it's clear we're going to need to do beach restoration at some level, and we're going to need funding. And I'll just conclude by saying my first priority is safety and organized traffic flow and preserving the rights of all those citizens who own property where their rights are violated every weekend. I mean, that's got to stop. So I would encourage everyone to take the larger view. Yeah, there are some downsides. There are lots of details to work out, and I'm not sure we're going to find a contractor who's amenable to what we want. But I would urge my colleagues not to settle for less than what we think is the best possible solution with a minimum guaranteed of funds. And I have to say $1 million over 10 years is $1 million that we don't have.
I think there's also, Councilman Weinkauf, I don't follow Facebook, and you probably are more involved in it. I think there's a misunderstanding that the citizens perhaps think they will be charged for paid parking, and that's, I can't speak for the council because it really hadn't got deep in discussion, but I have not heard that from any council member even would consider that even, I can't perceive the property owners or tax-paying citizens having to pay for paid parking. Councilman Weinkauf, have you got anything to say regarding that?
That was my whole idea, is I didn't want to see that happen. We have a little parking sticker we get for $5, and that should entitle every citizen in Oak Island to be able to park where they want to park. And I think what we were also looking at, if I'm not mistaken, is actually creating some more residential parking for the residents instead of a spot here, a spot there, but actually do some little staging so residents have a lot more areas to park in.
So there's a lot of misleading information, and that's why we hold these meetings, so you can get it straight from the horse's mouth. And so if you have any questions, please ask us, and we'll tell you where our thinking is on that. Sure. Mr. Mark Harkins had his hand up first, and then we'll go to the lady in the green.
Thank you again. Martin Hawkins, Northeast 34th Street. Recently, I was at a dentist in Charlotte, and out of curiosity, I said to the hygienist, I said, what does Charlotte have going for it? And she said, well, one thing is we're close to the beach. So residents of Charlotte, St. James, Leyland, all of them, Southport, they all come to Oak Island to go to the beach. And yet they're day trippers. They shop locally, bring everything with them, just leave the trash behind and go back. They are not revenue producers for Oak Island. I am by myself on Oak Island here. I have no siblings, no relative, nothing. But I see a strong wave of a drumbeat of people who have their own siblings, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever, and say, I'm not going to have them pay for parking. Well, I personally am picking up the tab for all of them, and I really don't appreciate it. That's just not fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Nancy McMurray, 6607 West Beach. I'm not really clear because there is a lot of information I'm not sure is correct on Facebook. I did see that the town is going to be sending out notices to people that have, I guess, landscaping or gravel within the right-of-way, within 8 feet of the edge of the road. And I'm not sure how this fits in with paid parking, and are you going to be expanding the parking? I mean, is there going to be parking everywhere within the town, or is it going to be, like now we have lots with indicated spaces? I'm not sure how this all coordinates together.
The right-of-way issue is a totally different issue. There's no, remind me, has there anything been settled on what we're going to do there? It's still up in there, so there's no firm 8 foot that you can plant in the town's right-of-way. Town owns the right-of-way, so that I didn't want that to mislead the public.
There's always been an ordinance that said nothing in the right-of-way.
Right. But we do have right-of-way parking on Oak Island. So if you live near the beach where there's 40,000 people come in that 3 months during the summer season, they park in your yard, which is legal. But I think to Councilman Block's credit is he's trying to say that with paid parking, the right-of-way parking would have to go away, except for, what do you call those play streets, David?
Yes,
they would be near the beach.
Yes, ma'am. Where we currently have parking, or where you see the yellow bumpers,
Right.
there'll be additional bumpers and places put in. And like Mr. Weinkoff said, that we are looking at adding additional spots for citizens.
Some more parking lots. And that is where the controlled chaos, if you ever go down the beachfront in season, you will see they're parked at the stop signs, they're parked everywhere. It's just total chaos. It improves your quality of life, I think is what another point Councilman Block was making. But we'll get into all that discussion later, but I didn't want to mislead the public thinking that they could plant 8 foot from the pavement right now. So, Chief, does anyone have a comment to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to comment. They are separate but related items. So your thinking is not that far off. So I think about it this way. We adopted a strategic plan. It has 3 elements. It's really quite simple, and in its simplicity is a good deal of eloquence. So environmental protection, by which we meant the tree canopy and the beach. We've achieved one. We're working on the other. We're getting closer to it. Infrastructure development, which is the pier, which is underway, which is another discussion. And parking. And then third was economic development. So they are related. If the right-of-way rules change, it will impinge parking and vice versa. But I think it's fair to say council is not of one mind on right-of-way decisions. We've had a lot of discussions, but we've not made a final decision. Nor have we made one on parking. We're awaiting the
getting ready to say,
date.
nor have we made any on paid parking.
And well, let me just say this, just so everybody knows what we've tried to do. Myself, the mayor, other council members, town manager, and other staff had made several trips to Raleigh, trying to get our legislators to see that this beach out here is infrastructure, that we need money coming down from Raleigh because all of them benefit from tourism, every one of them. And they're now starting to put some money in a pot for infrastructure. So all of our little trips up there have sort of been working out. We've also approached the county and asked the county, say, look, you're bringing in over $500 million a year on tourism. That's what keeps everybody's taxes low in the county, along with Oak Island. Can you help out a little bit? But we can't bust through that little wall right now. So we have to look at Oak Island to be able to keep our taxes low, because that's our benefit, tourism. That's what they keep coming for. If we don't have a place for them to come, they go somewhere else and our taxes will go up. So we're trying to balance everything, bring as much money as we can before we say, guys, we've got to do some of this on our own. So this is where we stand right now. There's nothing in stone. We're still working as hard as we can to bring in as much money as we can so we don't have to have it on our backs. So that's where everything stands right now. We're just looking at every possible avenue.
I've gotten several calls personally, and I always like having calls so I can explain one-on-one. And I don't think the general public understands that everything that's paid for regarding anything in Oak Island is out of the general fund. It is not out of the occupancy tax money. Some people are mistaking when they think our extra firemen or our cleanup every summer when we have staff out there at 4 o'clock in the morning and what we pay them, that's out of your money. That's out of your general fund. I'm not saying pay parking or no pay parking. I'm just letting you know that that money is, there's not a free day at the beach for the citizens of Oak Island. We all pay from the general fund to clean up what others leave. And I think some of the thinking on paid parking in a lot of the towns, and a lot of towns go to fund the cleanup and to go into the general fund to pay for those extras in fire protection and EMS and police safety and just about anything. We pay for it, not the visitors. The only thing that the accommodations tax is allowed for is sand and marketing. And, we could do a little bit of it as far as upkeep on things that come from the occupancy tax, but it does not go to pay for the cleanup or any staff salaries. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, because everybody I've talked to thought it came from the accommodations tax, and that is not correct. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I've got the microphone.
You got it already.
So I'm next.
Gentleman in the orange in the front's next.
Leon Hicks, Barnes Bluff. So what's the council thinking with regard to actually building or creating a parking area, for example, in the vicinity of 801, a place where the day trippers you mentioned, if they come to the island, they can be reasonably assured that there'll be a parking space without having to drive up and down, creating the traffic problems that Councilman Bach talks about, looking for a place to park. That way it'd be much easier to monitor and probably even more cost effective in the long run.
I'll let you answer that one, David.
Yeah. A few months back, we purchased some property at 604 Ocean Drive, the old Driftwood Motel. We've taken that down, and there will be a parking lot going back there. We're getting ready to apply for the stormwater permit and those kind of things and try to have that in before the season. It's not going to be an asphalt parking lot, or it'll be a stone driveway for this time. And a few amenities put in, some lights, some porta-johns, and look at putting bathrooms or whatever there later. But we are looking at putting that there.
And we are going to have the longest pier and the newest pier in North Carolina, which will draw a huge amount of tourists this season just for the pier. So I'm anticipating a rather chaotic season as far as parking. This gentleman, yes, sir.
Charlie Alexander, Northeast 41st Street. I just want to voice my opinion that I am opposed to residents paying to park.
Of course.
He's alluded to it in November minutes about the $5 decal, and that might have to go up. But as residents and taxpayers, that's not clearly defined, so I just want to voice my opposition to residents paying to park.
Yeah, we would have opposition to that too as well. So.
Thank you.
Taxpayers. I don't know about how you would term it or how we end up coming out, but definitely taxpayers.
Hi, I'm Elwood Sugarts, 1205 East Oak Island Drive. I got a question. They're building that new bridge over there, and in the concrete, are they putting fly ash in it? You know what fly ash is? It's off the coal producing generators, and they're trying to get rid of it, and they put it in all concrete where I come from unless you specified not to have it in. The concrete don't last as long, and it shortens the life of the concrete.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions on paid parking before we move forward? Couple here.
Bill Kraft, 204 Barbie. I know you said nothing is etched in stone. I also know and understand that you don't want anyone putting up a cute little fence or flowers or something like that within 8 feet of the right-of-way. But did I hear an implication that possibly when the little yellow parking barriers go in, that you're thinking of also putting those in people's front yards? Calling that a right-of-way instead of an eminent domain issue?
No, sir.
No.
No.
There was a
There was no
There was,
implication
there
of
was
that.
a question about the side streets, and David answered the side streets on the beachfront where the bumpers were.
Where they're at now.
I live
Where
on
they are
Barbie
now.
Boulevard, and I can see the ocean from my house. There is a median on Barbie Boulevard with all kinds of little yellow parking, and it's quite full on Labor Day and 4th of July. Again, my question is, was there an implication that there will also be little yellow things in each person's front yard on Womble, Sherrill, Crowell,
No.
Barbie, if it's that close to the ocean?
No.
Thank you very much.
David, would you like to clarify that statement?
I think Jeff did, no.
Okay.
Now you can post on locals for me there, Bill.
Any more questions? All right, no more, not seeing any more hands. Thank you for your, hey, we got one more in the back. We're coming to a next section. Thank you.
Do you have one? Got one more? Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Hi, Liz Carolyn, Northwest 13th. Whose responsibility is it going to be to provide the provisions between day trippers and weekly renters, and how they will it be town council's, or would it be the vendor's responsibility to delineate or designate the weekly renters who would typically park in the yellow bumper areas or the beach access, the Strand parking lots versus the paid parking lots?
I don't think I heard the first part of your question. I think what you're asking.
Who would be responsible? Would it be town council, or would it be the vendors? As to, I know in other North Carolina beach towns, the renters get like a parking pass either from the owner or from the realty company to put in their dashboard, so they can park in what we already have as parking spots, as opposed to paying in the paid parking spot, which I would think would be more towards the day trippers.
I'm not sure we could answer that question until we had the RFPs back.
Yeah, I mean, I know what we've looked at. We've looked at doing
Yeah.
people that have rental units on the front to be able to buy passes, sort of like we did with the South Harbor. They did a 10-game pass that's also worked, and people have put those in their places. But it's still sort of open-ended right now. But the town would probably be setting those rates. That would not be part of the contract. We would do those in-house, and we'd be responsible for those.
Thank you. There'll be more discussion on this. I don't want anyone to think that this is the one and only discussion. I mean, this is a very complicated and intense process. Okay, we'll go on to the public comment session. Thank you for your comments and your questions. And do we have someone on the list that would like to speak?
Yes. He already did. Deb Faust.
Sand. It's not about parking, and it's not about the bumpy roads. I'm Deb Faust. I'm president of the Oak Island Beautification Club and a concerned citizen, residing at 105 Southeast 58th Street. The Oak Island Beautification Club has been tending to the triangle that's at the intersection of Oak Island Drive and Country Club Drive for decades. While the bridge is closed, we have an opportunity to renovate the garden. We would like help excavating it and for an electric to be put on the island. We have met with North Carolina Department of Transportation and are looking at the possibilities of adding a fountain as a focal point. Your prompt help would be greatly appreciated.
Can I ask you, well, okay, turn this off. Since we've suspended the rules, I can ask you a question. Did the DOT agree to a fountain?
We would have to do one of the encroachments first, fill out one of those forms and give them the specifications.
And they were open to that, because we have dealt with that issue before, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to replan it also with a scale plan. As you've noticed lately, it's a mess. And it's been there forever and needs immediate attention. And like I said, excavating would be a great help for us.
Well, I would say bring that back and talk to our staff when you get to that point, and certainly we
Because
appreciate.
we're ready now.
We certainly appreciate what you're doing, and
The bridge is closed, and we've taken out the plants we want to take out. So the next step is to kill the nasty weeds or get it excavated.
just keep us in the loop. Yes, ma'am.
And then to have electric for the pump and for irrigation would be a great help. Because right now, the irrigation's working on a battery.
Is that ours or is that DOT's or?
They have to get approval from DOT.
I mean, can you even go in there and
I was told no.
excavate it or?
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
have-
they know what we're doing.
Who is they?
The Department of Transportation. We met with, I can get you the names.
Well, just, if you get approval from them, and we're certainly welcome you to keep us in the loop, and we'll definitely work with you as much as we can.
Okay, because we had, like I said, we had a meeting with them, and we had a representative from Caswell Beach also, because they're part of that site.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
And they would like something done also.
Right.
Okay.
Because it's getting terrible. Okay, on to another concern as a citizen.
3 minutes, I'm sorry. But I took up half your minutes, so I'll give you another minute and a half.
Yeah, because I practiced this. It was 2 minutes.
I'm sorry, I thought that was your answer.
So, no, I've got another important.
You're good, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
Other than
Go ahead.
the triangle. Also, as a concerned citizen, I'd like to mention the Town of Oak Island website, under the Parks tab, there are 17 parks listed. I'm not sure how many have visited all these, but last week I visited 14 of them listed on your website. The majority of them are in need of a facelift, which would include weeding, edging, mulching, and of course, the proverbial trash pickup. The Memorial Arboretum on Middleton was not included on this site. Don't know where it is on your town information, but it's on Middleton Road and needs a facelift also. It's a mess. In addition to that, the 30th Street Place West dock has collapsed at the entrance and is a hazard, so I suggest that get fixed immediately. The Heron Lookout needs stones replenished, and at the 31st Street walkover, the Overlook Trail is impassable due to overgrowth. With the expansion of our parks recently, veterans, and the soon-to-be splash pad, the need is even greater to take care of our resources. And I have a solution. I see the solution would have to be regular community work days. Oak Island Pride Day, to have the residents or community service teams work with the town personnel. We have beach cleanup, waterway cleanup, adopt a highway. It's time the parks have a priority and for them to reflect the natural beauty of our island.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
You know what would be helpful? If you would put that in an email and send it to Lisa, and then she can get, all right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Helen Cashwell.
Are you awake?
I am.
Is that accurate? We really have 17 parks? You been to all?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Helen Cashwell, 3407 East Yacht. Understandably, since the hurricane, lots of work has taken place on the island for flooding and damage due to hotspots that have plagued the town continually when there's been a great deal of rain, and it looks like we're still in that season. But no matter how much work that has occurred, there is much to be done. Tonight, I've heard from the beach side, I've heard from the business side. I want to speak for the middle of the town, the majority of the people who live here. I drive down Holly Street and still see continual flooding and water not moving down drainage ditches. 38th and Holly had repairs done, and on the north side, it appears since cones are in place that the repairs were signed off by the town as being complete. But within a week, the next rain caused a water spout to erupt in front of a house that has just had extensive repairs completed on the south side of the street. Still has not been repaired, and water continues to pool across the east side, causing damage to 142 Northeast 38th and to Holly. Anyone driving down East Oak Island Drive has been continually treated to the flooding in the 12th Street area. What does it take? Department heads from two major departments, Public Works and Stormwater, are both gone, and this was over 2 months ago. Forget about the beach. Start looking at all the storm drains and clean them out in a systematic way. One street at a time until they've all been taken care of, instead of reacting to the call-ins. We continually hire contractors and their people to clean up. We had them one time cleaning up the side streets. Why can we not do the same thing, hire contract, get in here and get this thing done? At one time, there was a plan and streets were listed to be paved. Since the Powell money is resting in our bank account, what and when will that distract from the drainage cleanups and the sinkholes that unexpectedly appear? I'll give you an example. In my driveway, it was reported in February we had a sinkhole, but it was a big gap, and when it was come out to be fixed, after I continually complained, there was a big gap in the stormwater pipe. It had never been connected, and it was at least 10 years old. Please, let the citizens of Oak Island know what your plans are for correcting these horrible cases of infrastructure failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caswell.
Jerry Hardy.
Jerry Hardy, Northeast 11th Street. I'm representing the Beach Preservation Society. Just a few quick announcements of what we've been up to. Council's agenda tonight includes an action for a new board member. We have two well-qualified applicants, one for a short 9-month term, who is Ms. Toni Chandler, and then we have recently had, just this week, someone had to step aside for health reasons. So we have a lady by the name of Karen Lynn, who's applied for the other position. We're right at the beginning of our fundraiser. If Ms. Lynn's application could be approved tonight, we'd appreciate it. Speaking of the fundraiser, tickets go on sale in February, and to members of the Beach Preservation Society, so be prepared for that. Cost is $35 this year. Let's see, bike racks. We do put bike racks up periodically in places. We have 8 that are needing replacing. If you'd like to be responsible or have your name put on the bike rack, that cost is $165, includes maintenance, labor, a commemorative plaque, and also a 5-year membership. Thank you.
Paula Chambers.
Paula Chambers, 608 East Beach Drive. And I don't know if this is the place, but I don't know where else. So if I'm wrong, tell me. I serve on the Board of Adjustment, and which, if I understand correctly, is a board that is mandated by North Carolina law. It's a quasi-judicial board, and any decisions made by the Board of Adjustment are binding and cannot be overturned by any by town council, by any other board, is my understanding. It is my understanding that town council has responsibility and authority to approve and deny special use and conditional use permits. The Board of Adjustment has a responsibility and authority to approve and deny variance requests and appeals. I read through the department reports, and on page 77 or 72, when it talks about appeals for all of 2018, it said no appeals submitted in 2018. Many were promised. Okay, that's my first concern. If the Board of Adjustment handles appeals, I'm not sure what these promises are that are being made outside the board. And then secondly, it says appeals seem to go to council rather than Board of Adjustment. So I guess I'm seeking clarification. We take this seriously, and people making promises is not going to end well. And if an appeal, comes before you, I would ask that it be referred to the Board of Adjustment.
Brian, can you address
Mr.
that?
Varez,
I'm
would
not
you?
sure I understand. I don't understand the question.
Jay.
Your question is what, there's certain
Well-
appeals that go straight to the Board of Adjustments, and then either the town or the applicant can then appeal to the Superior Court.
Right, after the Board of Adjustment, not, yes, correct.
Does that answer your question?
That is correct. No, well, I guess my question is more, maybe it's a comment, I don't know, that,
When you said the word promises, I kind of peeked up.
well, that's what it says in here, and I don't know what that means.
Here, what do you?
It's on page 72 of the department reports for 2018.
But those aren't appeals of, those aren't the kind of appeals that the Board of Adjustment handles. That's why I asked for Jake.
Yeah, I think
The
we
sort of
need to-
appeals that he's talking about are zoning.
Miscommunication. When I say promise, people who get a code enforcement letter, for example, when they come in, figure out what
Mr. Bowers, I'm sorry, can you go to the microphone? Thank you.
So oftentimes, when someone receives a code enforcement letter, I'll get a phone call, they'll come in and talk with me about it, figure out what's going on, what their violation is. And very often, they will promise to file for an appeal. And they'll say, oh, I'm going to appeal this, I disagree with your interpretation. And I'll probably hand out maybe over a dozen a year appeal paperwork saying, okay, here's your appeal paperwork, here's how it worked. And but then I suppose after a day or two of mulling it over, they opt not to. So that's all that meant.
Jake, just to clarify, and ma'am, I don't know where she sat.
It's back here.
Right there.
I see the word now. That's not something that the town has promised.
Okay,
That's something that someone who's been subject to a code enforcement interaction asserts that they're going to appeal. The minutes would reflect that.
Yes, please, I'm sorry, I did not read it that way. But the other piece about the appeals coming before the council rather than before the Board of Adjustment, that I ask that it be addressed, if my understanding is correct.
Jake, I think she's confused. I don't know. Steve, anybody want to?
Well, can we'll just take her back into training?
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah.
That's fine.
That'll be good. Thank you.
But, Madam Mayor, just
Yes.
a minute point. I think the problem is the verbiage, because in the number column, you report 0, but many citizens indicated they would, or many citizens began it's the promise part of it, I think, that is a little bit misleading, but the number column is clear, it's 0. Well, I was trying to be politically correct, Steve, but yes, many residents indicated they would, I think is a more neutral statement.
I'm sorry, but there are two more.
We have two more folks, and then we're going to take an emergency break. Who is it, Lisa?
Gerald Edwards.
3 minutes, please, Mr. Edwards.
Nice shirt.
Thank you.
I
I've
wonder why
already
you got that on.
spoken to the concern about the paid parking.
The second issue I did want to bring up, and it's already been addressed, I think, by Ms. Cashwell, but I wanted to expand on that a little bit. The body of water that's been impounded up at 11th Street and Oak Island Drive, and it seems like it's been there since the hurricane, and then every time it rains, it fills back up. I'm afraid there's going to be a bad accident there. People are swerving over into the suicide lane to try to miss the water when they're going towards the west end, and we haven't had really any freezing weather yet, but that's going to be a terrible place for, black ice and, stuff like that. So, what I'm wondering is, I know that Oak Island Drive is a state highway, but why can't we bring pressure to bear on the DOT or take our sucker truck up there or something? I was in the Citizens Academy this past year and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I do understand that we've got this truck that we could use for situations like that, but that water needs to be gotten up somehow. There's got to be an engineering solution to that. I don't know what it is, but like I say, we just need to bring some pressure to bear on the DOT and work with them to to try to get that taken care of. I mean, it's been there way too long.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Kelly, want to say anything? No?
In my report.
Okay. Pete Key? Oh, thank you. Key.
Madam Mayor and councilors, I've prepared a statement I'm going to go ahead and read. I'll take questions after if you have any. Our core purpose here in the drive and heart of Oak Island is to be a beach town and a destination. I think we've covered that about 100 times tonight. A place for people from all over our nation to come and enjoy, where the sea meets the shore. A pristine place of impeccable beauty. Oil companies say they want to create jobs and security. There are already 57,000 jobs here in North Carolina and $2.5 billion in revenue that are created from tourism. Brunswick County's 5 beautiful beaches earned the second most visited coastal county in North Carolina behind Dare County. How many jobs will offshore drilling bring to Brunswick County when New Jersey already has an oil port? If not New Jersey, then Norfolk for sure. Both are better suited, and at what permanent expense, if they did build here, would come with it. The infrastructure would be abandoned when the oil was gone, and once we spoil the coast, it will never be pristine again. You can't remake pristine. You just can't get that back. They say it's a claim of national security, yet we haven't touched our strategic reserve in 10 years. As of 2018, we are now the top oil-producing nation in the world, and we broke from an import nation to an export nation last year as well. We export more oil than we bring in. If we create more supply, it will not stay here. It will go abroad. And how does that create more security for America and our future? It creates dollars for mostly foreign oil corporations today, not a future for tomorrow. On 4/29/2014, Oak Island passed a resolution against seismic blasting and an issue of concern for drilling. Then on 9/8/2015, we revised our position after doing our research and issued a resolution against both seismic and drilling. At that time, we had done all we thought we could do. Speak up and tell the federal government we don't want it, even though they can do it anyway. Now we have the opportunity to put teeth behind that request. We don't stand helpless any longer. 16 South Carolina municipalities, 10 state attorney generals, and a number of non-government organizations have sued the federal government in court to stop a violation of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Deep geology seismic mapping is dangerous to all ocean life, from the smallest plankton to the largest whale, but especially to marine mammals because they use sound to hunt, find mates, and communicate. The deafening blast emitted in a survey occurs every 10 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for months on end, potentially by up to 5 different companies at the same time. These blasts can be heard as far as 2,200 miles away in the ocean. Think LA to New York. Imagine that sound blasted in the air that frequently off the coast of Brunswick County. I'm almost done. It would wreak havoc on our lives. The opportunity exists for us to join one of these lawsuits via amicus curiae briefs. I strongly encourage the council to consider this. I have contact information needed to do so, and I'm aware that Sunset Beach will be voting on joining that brief on January 17th. Thank you.
Hey, so just to be clear, because I think we got tied up a little bit in not clear what your ask is.
I'm asking the town of Oak Island to join that amicus brief. Join that lawsuit.
Friend of the court, I understand what you're asking.
Yes. Mr. Edis would probably be the one to write that, but he can get help from the Southern Environmental Law Center and also from SCELP, South Carolina Environmental Law Protection.
I mean, we did, this town helped sponsor one that for a case I was handling for the town of Emerald Isle, if you recall.
Correct.
And on some of those amicus briefs, we'll have 20 parties on it to give it more weight with the court.
Correct.
So there's all kinds of options on that.
So what I guess Mr. Key is suggesting or asking us to consider is to join as a town, as a council in that brief?
Yes, ma'am.
You would write it is Latin for a friend of the court. You would write a brief and submit it. You're not a party to the suit, but you're asserting to the court you have an interest in the subject
It's like an
matter.
endorsement type of thing?
Right, like we did, like Oak Island did for Emerald Isle a few years ago.
Yeah, but he's suggesting that somebody else is already writing a brief.
Well, I'm going to ask him is Sunset Beach a party to, which litigation are you referring to?
The lawsuit against the federal government violating the Marine Mammals Protection Act.
Have your contact
Yes, sir.
information, right? Let's follow up on
Absolutely.
that, because I need to know which piece of litigation he's referring to see where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Key. We'll look into it.
Thank
And
you.
appreciate you coming and bringing that forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council.
Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break and see you back at might have cooties.
Oops. Wow, we cleared everybody out.
Yeah.
Everybody cleared out pretty well.
Sizzle now, here too.
I'm waiting for Mr. Eves.
Override.
Voice in the sky.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll call the Oak Island Town Hall meeting back to order. And we'll move on to what we left for Mr. Eves to come, number 6 on the consent agenda. Councilman Bach, I believe you had some comments regarding that.
Well, I have a comment, but my questions were for counsel, so I'm pleased he's here with us.
Welcome.
Otherwise, I could not direct them to anyone else. I do want to say, just as an observation, I think because of the sort of centrality of the plot of land that Publix will build on and where it is and how it impacts our entire business district, that we probably should keep all things Publix at least in the public domain so we can comment. I know a lot of citizens have emailed me, they're concerned about its development, et cetera. So that being said, and not having been on council when the original authorization was approved, I am going to need your indulgence here if I can, Counselor. So as I read 36 through 46 with attendant maps and so on, it looks like, it feels like it's an encrypted document. So let me just ask, if I may, that what's happening here is, as part of the developmental process, we're being asked to make additional concessions, which we are, to spur development, including 2 roads, 2 right-of-ways. And I understand that. I guess my question is, are these concessions going to be specific to the development of a Publix, or are they granted to the corporation? And the reason I ask that is that there's been a good deal of press recently about, in Carolina Beach, about land that was purchased and an intent was stated, and then the owner of the land said, well, no, I no longer have that intent, I'm going to do something else. So we have Halpern here representing that they're going to build a Publix, and we're giving them concessions, but what if they decide not to do it? Are they binding specific concessions?
No, I don't want to give Publix legal advice, but I'll answer your question.
Well, please don't give them free legal advice.
No, well, trust me, they don't need it.
Okay.
But if you look at the recital on page 38 of the agenda packet, it's actually page 1, though, of the development agreement.
I'm with you.
The second recital refers to project as a proper noun, and that proper noun is a Publix shopping center.
Mhm.
And everywhere throughout this agreement it refers to the project. So the project, which is the subject of the contract, is a Publix shopping center. So I would certainly contend, if needed, I don't think it's going to be needed, that they are required to build a public shopping center.
Okay. That answer gives me great comfort, Counselor, because I would hate to make concessions and have them turn around and say, you know, gee whiz, we don't want to have a public shopping center, we want to have something else, which apparently is what has happened in other towns.
We have, and I'll defer to Steve and Jake, we have no indication of anything like that on this project. In fact, they're full board ahead.
Their development permit's ready, they've turned the building
Right.
permits.
So
So-
we're pretty sure Publix is coming. That's the calls I get all the time, people wanting it.
When are we
wanting to know when it's coming.
When are they coming? Thank you, Madam
When are
Mayor.
they coming?
When, if you could project that timeline, when are they going to arrive on the island?
And Councilmember
When they
Bob-
break, when's shovel ready?
They're gonna break ground, Steve.
There is a representative here, Scott Cook, for that question too.
That's called
Hey, are you
throwing
listening?
you under the bus.
Paying
Bus
attention to
coming?
this?
Yes, ma'am. We did turn in the building permits, so we are looking to start, Halpern is looking to start Publix this summer, as far as the building, the vertical construction.
I believe I've heard from Mr. Worthing that hopefully we will cut a ribbon in December, or at least by the 2020 tourist season.
Yes, ma'am. The projection date is they generally want 270 days to build their stores allowed. It can be shorter, but yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so to be clear, there'll be shovels in the ground when? I want to hear that magic.
That's the vertical construction. We're working hard to start the site work because we have to do a lot of building pad preparation, so hopefully within the next 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the bids that the site contractors submit.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Sure. Actually, there's a couple of things with the building pad. We have to surcharge it for 60 days, which of course we're going to put 11 feet of fill above the finished elevation to sit, but we also have to do something called liquefaction, which is a requirement based off our geologist report that we have to put in for the potential of a earthquake to handle the liquefaction of the soil. So that will be done based off the existing elevation, and then they'll start the building pad.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question, Madam Mayor, for our esteemed council.
But before you do, and you agree with my assessment that there's a Publix coming, right?
I'll just remind all of you gentlemen, you're being recorded, but I certainly hope they are coming. So, again, I need a little latitude here, Counselor. So, I think we've all received a lot of feedback about Dollar General. Some of it really interesting. That being said, outside of the UDO, is it permissible under North Carolina law to regulate or manage something called aesthetic zoning? Can the aesthetic be part of the zoning?
It can be, but it's got to be part of your ordinance at the time that any applications are
Well,
received.
perhaps that ship has sailed. But for example, can you specify certain kinds of materials?
Within reason, yes. I mean, you can't require them to have platinum or gold signs, obviously. It's got to be kind of standard in the industry, but it can be the higher end of the standard. It's got to be within reason, yes.
Okay, so that may be something that I think we should consider as a council, so that property rights being what they are and business being what it is, we insist on some aesthetic quality to the business district in terms of construction. It's something to think about. So you're saying it's permissible within reason?
Within reason.
Okay.
Brian, when I
clearly cite dimensions and things like that, but the more detailed you get as far as the actual material and things like that, I don't want to say the less reasonable the court will construe it, but I mean, you can't dictate everything, but you can certainly have it to where it's uniform and more sightly. A perfect example, although it's not in North Carolina, down in Hilton Head, if you go down there, even their fast food stores, you can't even, it's not this big huge McDonald's sign. It's this nice wooden sign.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Isn't there one of those resort areas that don't even allow signs at all? Is that the one?
Well, I don't know about a private resort. I mean, I'm just talking about Hilton Head in general as you drive in there. I was in Mount Pleasant over New Year's, and they appear, I haven't looked at their code, but they appear to have a similar, more refined aesthetic.
So if we just, okay, so down the road, obviously, the building I reference is under construction, but down the road, that is permissible within the bound, whatever, reason is one of those elastic words. Let me test that for a second. So
You can't, if you have to read a sign, you're in trouble. In other words, you can't, if you differentiate on what the sign reads, then that's the highest level of scrutiny under the United States Constitution. In other words, you can't differentiate between a McDonald's sign versus a high-end clothing store sign. I'm not saying that's what you want to do. I'm just saying that if you have to read the content of the sign to see which regulation applies, then you're getting into the strict scrutiny, and that those are rarely enforced.
yeah, I understand. So again, in the packet, I noted the Publix is going to be facing Pelican, so that will provide a parking lot along the major part of the commercial district. But my point is that's something we could not regulate, correct?
Well, at this point, you couldn't because there's a development agreement. By contract.
We're talking theory here, Council. Yeah. Can we regulate something like that?
Orientation of a building?
Yeah.
It would depend on the reasons you had. I would think that if you had demonstrable public safety issues, possibly, but you're getting into some gray area there, and I think that's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
And we're not Hilton Head.
I'm sorry?
And we're not Hilton Head.
Well, I mean, now, if I understand your question correctly, you're talking about just our UDO. Now, you have much more flexibility in a development agreement like this because that's just your standard contract.
Mm-hmm.
The question was more geared toward the Dollar General, though.
It
rather
was.
than Publix.
Yes, it was. But
We've been getting a lot of phone calls
I
about
wanted to
Dollar
see,
General.
Council's answer was more than satisfactory. What I wanted to see was where the limits of that stop. So the orientation of a building, right, in this case, putting a parking lot in the center of the business district, is probably not a safety issue, so therefore that would be too far, a bridge too far. But materials, facades, theoretically.
Yes.
Okay. But that's
If
the
there
answer to Dollar General. That's what I'm pushing you on.
But if Dollar General or any other business has already applied.
Yeah, I
then
understand.
okay.
I understand. But the pushback we're getting is, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Mr. Eves,
Well, and there's another tool, conditional zoning too, and that's something we can do a workshop on or something like that, but that's when the applicant says, if you will rezone this property, I will build this. And then you have the flexibility to say, well, we won't agree to that, but if you'll do these three things, then we will rezone, and that's perfectly, that's been upheld in the North Carolina courts. That's another tool you could use, and it gives both sides, it gives the applicant and the town a lot more flexibility.
When I first became mayor, I'm not sure who gave me this information. Maybe I misunderstood it, but I was told, I thought being a new mayor and not knowing the law like I do now, or thought I did, that you could not I thought we could do a ordinance that would make you put a facade on a metal building, a certain facade, and I was told that in the state of North Carolina, you could not dictate that to a private.
Well, I mean, you can't tell them what they have to put. You can say, if you put something up, it has to meet these requirements.
Then I think we need to go to our toolbox and during this year and see what we can come up with, because.
But you guys are asking some questions that it really, I mean, I would need some more details.
Sure.
But conceptually, you have the ability to regulate some of that. I think I understand. You want a better streetscape look, essentially.
Exactly.
Yes, that's what I was asking you, the extent of our authority under law, and you've given us, beyond that, the devices that we could use. Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Thank you, Council. Are you finished, Mr.
May I say something about this? The actual proposed amendment to this development agreement has been handed out to you now. I don't know that it was in the original agenda packet.
It was, and it's online. It just, the memo, I think, was missing from the agenda packet.
Yeah, I know it was online because the copy I printed off had it, but I didn't see it in my hard copy. But what it is they're required under paragraph 1 to commence with construction of the road by January 31st of this year. And if they don't, on February 1st, we can issue them a 30-day, a letter, 30 days notice that they need to do it, or we're going to request that it be deeded back to us. Sounds to me like that's not what we want. If anything, we want them to go forward quicker. It's my understanding that they have applied or asked for, essentially, if you take the 30-day notice from February 1 through the end of February, that you're in the beginning of March, they're asking for April 1st. So all they're really applying for is a 1-month extension through April 1st, 2019. I and staff recommend that you approve that amendment. It's a very simple amendment, and we have all indications, and you heard from the representative as well, we have all indications they're going forward as quickly as reasonably they can. So the simple amendment is just practically a 30-day extension. Technically, it's a 60-day extension, but at any rate, it's April 1st.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, I entertain a motion.
I make a motion to amend the development agreement with Halpern Enterprises LLC as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please. Thank you. Moving on to the committee appointments, and the first committee appointment is the Board of Adjustments with one unexpired term ending March 2020. The first name on the list is Ed Hardy. Show of hands, please. 4, unanimous. Well, I guess that kind of ends it, right? The second appointment is for the Par 3. There's 2 terms, and they end in January of 2022. We have had some additional ones added, so there are 4 applicants. The first one's Ed Baxter Jr. Show of hands, please. Jim Cross. And Ronald Cratch,
I think.
Crotch, okay.
Are you calling for him?
Show of hands, please. And Stephen Byrd. 4, okay. So we're looking at Mr. Cross and Mr. Byrd. Beach Preservation Trust Fund, there's 2 applicants. The first one is Tony Ann Chandler.
Madam Mayor, may I ask our council to go ahead and vote on both of these, since they have recently had a someone resign, rather than bringing it back next month?
And I haven't advertised for that position, so I don't know if anyone else in the public wanted to be
Or
considered.
wouldn't they have?
I mean, possibly, but.
But whoever doesn't get voted can bring it back next time.
Well, the thing is, the guy from the Beach Preservation asked that we please, and Roseanne Fortner has asked that we please go ahead and try to put both of them on there because of the fundraiser. They need the help.
You could put them on for a month, advertise, and then see what happens.
Can we do that?
Whatever y'all want to do.
I'm just saying, if you want to put somebody on there now and not have to wait, you could appoint them on the condition that the position will be advertised, and then the council will look at that person, including all the other applicants, next month.
So wouldn't it have to be an alternate, and then you vote for the one, and then the second person would have to be an alternate, and especially if they're undone next time?
Well, I think right now you're filling a vacancy, aren't you?
Filling both?
One of them
One.
has been advertised. That one you can vote on straight on. The other one, if there's a manpower need now, as we've heard.
It's kind of temporary.
You don't want to, I think it's a good idea to advertise for all positions. It's unfortunate on the timing.
I agree with that.
It's just
I
one
agree
month.
with that.
So, you can appoint one for however, and the other one for 30 days with understanding there's going to be advertising, and then you'll look at that position next month.
Okay. Is that okay?
Y'all with that? Okay. Tony Ann Chandler, show of hands, please.
Is that going to be for the
The
full-time?
one one unexpired term ending September 2019?
Yes.
Okay.
That's for that one. Okay, and the second is Karen Lynn.
And she's for the 30 days.
To be re-advertised.
To be re-advertised. Okay.
All right, thank you, council.
And
Number-
just to save that applicant, Lisa, do you see any problem with the council and not having to vote, but just acknowledging right now that they will consider that application next month?
No, I think it's fine. I can bring it back. It's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 4 on the committees is the appointment of chairman of the ABC board.
Madam Mayor, I have a parliamentary question I'd like to direct to council here. So in the past, we have not made this appointment. This has been, in essence, delegated to the board itself. And the way I read this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it is preferential under North Carolina law to have council appoint, but is it possible for us to delegate that to them as we've done in the past? Is this something we must do, is my question.
Councilmember Bach, in all candor, I'm not prepared to answer that question tonight, and I would ask for, even if you wanted to call a special meeting for a little bit of time to look into that issue, Ms. Stites, and I've talked about that tonight.
I would prefer not to delay the process. It's just a parliamentary question because we've done it one way for apparently time immemorial. Now suddenly we're saying the law requires us to appoint. I was just curious whether we could transfer that authority to the board itself.
And I've been Oak Island's town attorney for, I don't know, my daughter's 12, so probably 13, 14 years. I don't recall ever having to look into this issue on this appointment at all, and I apologize.
They've always done it, as long as I can
Yeah,
remember.
I'm just saying, I would not be comfortable giving an opinion with any confidence
I'll gladly withdraw my request.
off the seat of my pants.
That's fair. I wouldn't want to put you in that position.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Willie Williams as chairman for the ABC board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I think it needs to be voted on the way we do committees.
I think it's what it's in the
Well, there's no
agenda.
names on here or anything.
No, it's not.
No, I think it
So I
has
made
to
a
be
motion.
more official than that because of the state statute on it. It's not a committee.
All right, so you got 2?
Did I understand, earlier someone said to me that they had already chosen a chairman?
I mean, I'll be glad to tell you everything I know about it.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay. So the state law says that, let me read it exactly because I pulled it up. The state law says the appointing authority shall designate one member of the local board as chairman. So council appoints the members, so the appointing authority shall designate one member of the local board as chairman. Our town charter says that the chair of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board of the Town of Oak Island shall be appointed by the Oak Island Town Council. But then we have our ordinances that say,
The names are on.
for all of our boards, that the board or committee elects a chairman from among their members. So there's just some discrepancy or, which kind of trumps which.
Well, on our,
And then, well, if I could finish, I'm sorry. And I did speak with one of the board members today, and he said that they did vote and pick Willie Williams. I spoke with Mr. Williams
the
today.
members of the board?
3 members of the board voted for Mr. Williams. It was not a unanimous vote.
Okay.
So that's what I know.
Okay, in our agenda package, Lisa, it says action needed. This may help clarify something on Councilman Weinkauf. Council to select a chairman, the same nomination process used for committee appointments may be used.
And their names are in the top paragraph of the memo. The last sentence has the 3 names.
Thank you.
All the members' names?
Yes, ma'am, there's only 3 members.
Okay, so we have a vote on did we vote on that? We voted on that, yes.
2 people did.
Well, there appeared to be a question as to whether you were going to do it as a formal vote or as a committee appointment. I'd prefer that to, 1, the council decide which way they're going to go, and 2, bring up whatever name at that point that you want to.
You prefer the way we did it?
Well, I'm saying it appeared to me that there was a question. So the first question I would ask you to address is, are you going to call for a formal vote, or are you going to do it in the same manner you appoint members to a committee? As far as the procedure, which way do y'all want to do it?
I think there's some
Whichever way y'all
confusion.
decide. But
Well, let's poll the,
Well,
all right,
Right now, there's a motion on the floor, I think.
No, I think we voted it down. All in favor? All opposed? I mean, all opposed? Okay.
Well, I'd prefer if we have a show of hands for all.
Show of
opposed.
hands that oppose,
If you're going to make it a formal
if it's a
motion.
motion.
Thank you.
Three, okay. So that motion is,
Dead.
did not pass.
Okay.
Now, how do we want to do it? Do we want to do it like Brian suggested, or?
Now, I think you need to vote on.
On the other same way?
Any other name you bring up, do it just like
All
we
right,
did.
do we
that.
have another motion or another name?
Is there another name?
I don't
I'll put
know
a
who-
nomination of the remaining member, because I think we have an obligation to do that. It's Joe Stanton.
He's the longest member on the board?
I said we have an obligation to put his name in nomination. I'll nominate him.
Okay.
I don't know.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Joe Stanton. Second? Okay, he died for lack of a second. Anyone else? We have to have a chairman. Okay.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to nominate Jack Moore.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of Mr. Jack Moore? Three. All opposed, for the record? Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Moore?
I think we need to do some house cleaning on our ordinance and everything else to make everything match up. Because we've been doing it for one way all these years, and it's in our ordinance that way, and then we've got contradiction that we have to do it. I think it
And-
needs to be cleaned up.
Exactly, and now we have them, the board voting on
That's
the
what I'm
chairman.
saying.
Now
It needs to be
we've unvoted
cleaned up.
that, so.
If council prefers to continue to make the appointment every year, then I would suggest that we amend our ordinances to reflect that, rather than trying to amend the charter the other way.
Well,
Much easier to
we allow all our boards to get their chairmans, and I think all boards need to do that.
I agree.
We need to be consistent.
I agree.
I agree. They know each other a lot better than we do.
All right, so, Counselor, let me ask you another question. I'm not sure if you can answer this one. So since the board, per our normal procedure, had already picked a chair, right? And now we've appointed someone different than their choice, can we defer the appointment of Mr. Moore? Can we make it effective next year?
You could. You could accept the existing selection by the ABC board.
Because what that accomplishes is we don't overturn tradition, they've already voted, but we've made a selection for the next year. So I'll make that motion. Is that phrasing close enough, Council?
Except that we have one member of the board coming off every year. So next December, this December, you'll have an appointment to consider. So you might not have the same three members next January.
Nonetheless, their wishes were honored this year, and we've appointed the chair for 2020.
Is there a chair appointed every year?
Yes.
I would assume so.
Okay.
But Councilman Weinkauf also just suggested that we change our ordinance to next year, let it go back to how the.
Well, that would be a charter. We'll have to amend the charter.
Maybe we should consider not doing anything at this meeting and doing it next meeting once we see what, I don't know. Brian, help.
Well, I mean, our ordinance needs to be consistent with our charter, and we need to make sure we reconcile our charter with the general statutes, which doesn't appear to be a problem. You don't want chaos on that board. You don't want professional rivalry on that board. That doesn't behoove anyone.
No.
No, you do not.
And I apologize, Madam Mayor, I didn't realize the history of this until a few moments ago when Lisa and I discussed it.
So what do we do now that we've,
Well, I have a motion on the floor, Madam Mayor, that we honor the current chair as selected by the ABC Board, which has been past tradition, and that we set the appointment of Mr. Moore, who we just voted for next year.
you're making that in the form of a motion?
He did.
Yes, I'm asking if
Yeah,
Brian's
he
saying
did,
yes,
and it's
that's the
been
motion.
seconded.
It's
Okay,
on
all
the
in
floor.
favor?
I think that's fair to everybody.
All right,
I think that accomplishes two things.
Thank you for making that motion.
You're welcome.
I did not want people fighting over the chair's chair.
But that still gives us time to bring everything in line.
Yes, and it serves that's excellent.
So let me understand, so what we're saying is we're going to go back to letting the committees appoint their own chairman.
No, we're saying we're honoring their vote this year, which has already taken place.
Okay.
We've appointed the chair for the next year, because
Understand
it's
that.
now our obligation. We're going to change our ordinance, make
But
our
to
charter.
but to what, to
But we're
what-
going to change it to
what Jeff said, we're gonna change it to the committee.
Right.
after next year.
After next, okay, gotcha.
So the charter amendment I'll bring back will be to make it effective December of
21.
2021.
Well,
This is
January
19.
of 2021.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, right.
What a cluster.
So we're clear, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, administrative reports, David. You're up.
Yes, ma'am. We have the RFPs out, as you discussed earlier. The paid parking is due back on January 14th. We should look at those and gather the information for those and bring them back to you on the retreat for y'all to preliminary look at those and sort of come back with any answers or questions that you may have for us. The Pier Complex, it is due back on February 7th. We have a site visit that's mandatory for everybody putting a bid in. And I believe that's January 18th on a Friday morning at 8 o'clock. And that's looking at, you can have the whole complex, you can break it out into separate items. Everything that council asked us to put into the RFP, it is out there that way. The paving RFP, it'll go out this Friday. We have asked the engineer who did the study to come back and look at a few streets that was brought to our attention after the storm. The water and stuff sitting on some roads created more potholes and things on other roads that were not on the original list. So he's going to come back and give us a number for those to be able to look at. The 11th Street pond that everyone keeps addressing, Iris with DOT out of the Schlote office, she has been working on this. Gene Cudges was working on it with her before he left, and so was George, and now Mike has picked it up. They have been in touch with us, and they are now, what they're looking at is having something in place before Easter weekend. It's going to be a pipe that'll go underneath East Oak Island Drive, a catch basin on both sides of the roads, and they'll take the water down southeast 11th Street. It'll be a piped and some open ditch down that to take it down to Davis Canal. And we'll talk with the property owners as it goes along. And we've had a few of those in touch with us already that we've talked to.
It's not an issue that we have not addressed.
No, it's an ongoing thing, and DOT has been working on some other projects, and they're getting to other projects now. It's going to have a lot of survey work to make sure that we get all the falls and the collection of the water in those areas to be able to get it out of the way. Stormwater projects, we are still working on those. As we had talked before, we had 168 projects to start with, and we're down to about 102 of those. The additional staff that y'all approved has been hired, and they started yesterday. So that is good news for us on that, so we can get some things done for the upcoming season. Johnny had talked about the SDI 5 permit. We had been in touch with them, and they said we should have it early February. And I believe that's all we have at this time, unless you have any other questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kelly?
Just one question. It's really just a consideration, less than a question. Each month, when I look at the reports for the fire department, their number one response out is for falls. And I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be doing something educational in our media so people can be more conscious of tripping hazards, et cetera. And that's a down the road kind of thing, because each year that leads the fire department. Each month, the fire department responds to falls. So, yes, sir.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, one thing, I didn't want this to go unnoticed, but in the reports from department heads, the police department made 36 narcotic arrests in December, and 24 were felonies. So I think that sends a clear message. If you want to go to prison, come to Oak Island, sell drugs. Thank you, brother.
Amazing. Thank you.
That's my report, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. East, do you have anything?
No report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
We don't,
Mr. Eves didn't need one, I don't think.
I didn't need one.
Mr. Kelly, did you need a closed session?
Not unless they do.
So we don't need a closed session?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Amen.
Second.
Oh, come on.
All in favor? All in favor. Thank you,
adjourned.
and thank you for coming and hanging.
Now, you do have a chair to put